may not know this, but Squaresoft does actually have a few games that don't involve Final or Fantasy in its game title. One such game is The Bouncer, an early PS2 beat-em-up featuring a few RPG elements. It's got some quirks, but overall, it's a pretty fun game. The first thing to note is that The Bouncer is heavily story-driven. In between each fighting stage is a long cutscene. These cutscenes vary slightly on whichever player you last played as. Oftentimes, these scenes only vary with the dialogue spoken, but occasionally they'll change completely, such as the endings. It gives you plenty of reason to play through the game multiple times to get every possible detail in the storyline. The problem with this is that if you choose the wrong characters at first, the game might come off as a little confusing. In my opinion, it's actually best if you stick with one character through each playthrough on your first pass. But the downside of this is that you'll have one very powerful character and two really shitty weak ones. But that's the fun part of the game. Before every fight, you get the option to choose who you want to play as. Each character has a line they'll spit off before and after the fight. Other than the story, each character naturally has different personalities and movesets. Let me run through them real quick. Your main character is Sion. Just like the other two guys, he's a bouncer in a bar named Fate. He has a ridiculously large dog collar around his neck, and has a striking similar look to Titus in Final Fantasy X. He has your basic moveset, and doesn't seem to be as strong as any one area. However, the game mainly focuses around his quest for revenge, so he's still important to the game. Volt is the second guy, and he's pretty intimidating by his looks. You learn that he has the piercings and horns for a reason that's not entirely cosmetic. It's to actually heal scars on his body from some sort of bad blood between him and one of his enemies. I won't spoil it for you, as the game is extremely cheap and should definitely be played. Anyway, he's the restorer of the group, and he's slow but powerful. If you need a tank in your group, Volt's your guy. As a bonus, he has a Cactuar-style logo on his jacket. The final bouncer is Ku, a kickboxer who's covered in tribal tattoos. Just like Volt, he actually has a reason for all of the tattoos. He's not really any quicker than the other two bouncers, although you would expect him to, but he does have some good range on some of his attacks. He's also the sarcastic one of the bunch, which leads to some pretty humorous moments. In addition to the bouncer's personalities, you also get some small text-based backstory via the loading screens. The only problem is that sometimes the game will load too quickly, and you won't be able to finish reading it before it goes away. These screens only come up at certain times, and when there are loading screens, they're minimal. If you haven't noticed by now, there's some outrageous costume designs in this game. The bouncers are actually some of the tamer ones. Some of your enemies just look out there. That doesn't mean it's bad, it's just something you wouldn't expect in a fighting game. But it is Squaresoft, so I guess we should be expecting it. Let's get on to the actual meat of the game, the fighting. Basically, first you choose your bouncer, and then you fight. Each scene is relatively short, lasting anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes. The controls are very easy to learn. Basically, each face button attacks with different strikes. R1 blocks, and L1 allows you to do some additional moves when holding it and pressing a face button. On occasion, you'll get a signal that will allow you to do something called a Trinity Rush, which is essentially a team attack. These moves look pretty badass, but they do a pathetic amount of damage compared to your normal strikes. Most of the times, these attacks are so brutal looking that, such as a soccer kick to the face, that you'd expect them to kill your enemy outright. The final boss counters it, but that's to be expected. But for everyone else, especially the grunts, why don't they fall quicker? Anyway, back to the basics. The fighting is simple, but that doesn't mean it's bad. The movement could have been smoother, as when you get closer to an enemy, you slow down dramatically. This is to make it easier to fight your opponent, but since L2 isn't used, you'd think that you could just hold that and move freely. Anyway, you just attack and defeat the thugs. With every enemy you down, you'll earn bouncer points. These are necessary to upgrade your stats for each bouncer. The problem is that if one of the AI controlled dudes steals a kill, you don't get any points for it, even if you did all of the work. However, you can do the same to them and steal the points away. Also, only the bouncer you're controlling obtains any bouncer points, so if another dude takes a kill, it's pretty much lost. This sounds like it could suck, but thankfully the AI is pretty horrible at doing anything. Against regular guys, they seem to be able to hold their own a little bit. Against bosses though, it's a completely different story. Oftentimes, you can just be getting your ass kicked, and they'll just stand around watching, looking for some popcorn. It can be brutally frustrating, especially since there's no continues and you need to reload a previous save. On top of that, you would either need to rewatch or manually skip every cutscene. The continue would have been a nice feature to have, rather than reloading all the time. One last problem with the combat is that you can't control the camera, and this can make for some really awkward spots. It doesn't happen often though, so it's not really something you have to be consciously aware of. Oh, one more thing. It would have been nice to see some destructible environments, especially in the beginning with the bar. Instead, you need to navigate around objects instead of just breaking through them. Oh, one last little thing and I swear I'll move on. There's no co-op mode. This is incredibly disappointing in a game like this. It would have been a kick-ass addition, but I guess we'll just have to put up with it not being there. Okay, fine. I'll move on now. After each fight, you move on to the upgrade screen. Review your balance of bouncer points, and can choose what you want to upgrade. You have a choice between your maximum health, your defensive power, or your strength. Or, if you want, you can choose to unlock a new move. These are pretty expensive, but often worth it as they'll normally hit multiple enemies. They're not necessary to finishing the game, but they do sure help. After so many upgrades, your rank will go up. There's really no meaning to your rank though, although it does make it easier at the bouncer select screen to see which one is better than the others. After upgrading your bouncer a bit, you'll usually watch a bit of the story. There's quite a bit of footage available, and the catch is that it feels like you're doing more watching than playing. Thankfully, if you're playing the game multiple times to further upgrade the bouncers, you can skip these scenes. There's some impressive graphics in these, and the voice work is well done, at least for the most part. The one character, a robot named PD4, sounds a lot like Seymour Guado, so I wonder if they reused a few voice actors from this game when they created Final Fantasy X. Oh, and the announcer that says the bouncer when you hit start?
The bouncer.
That just sounds awful. The game actually comes on CD as opposed to DVD, so naturally it's not going to be as lengthy as some other games. But the thing about this is that if you play your cards right, you can easily complete the game start to finish in about 45 minutes. Multiply this by your 3 characters, and you're looking at about 2.5 hour playtime, not including about an hour of video. That's not very much, but it's still an enjoyable experience nonetheless. There's really not much else I can say from here. I might have said quite a few cons about the combat, but believe me, it's still solid and fun. If you're interested in playing the game, you can probably find it in the game store for about $5. I bought it about 8 years ago or so for about $8, so I'm sure it probably dropped a couple more dollars. Definitely give it a shot if you want to try a good beat 'em up, but don't expect anything that's really in-depth. Final score? 7 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.